Hello guys, it is Mbe Dev here once again. Today I'm going to be taking you through another tutorial in C, and what we are going to be looking at today is variables. This is what we are going to be looking at today. But before I do that, I'm quickly going to take you through the basic structure of a C program. So let's navigate to our folder, and then I'm going to create a file, touch, let me call it cvars.c, and then I'm going to emacs c_vars.c. Good. And now we have our emacs editor. So the basic structure of a C program is this. So this is the basic structure of a C program. You see that we have an include directive here, and we are asking it to include the standard input output header. And like I said in the previous video, this is very necessary if you are going to be using the print function. Then we start by writing out the main function. Every code in C should be run in the main. If it is not running the main, it is not going to work for you. So you start int main, open and close your parentheses and open your curly braces. This is the opening block, and then you write your code here. What I've done here with these two double strokes is to comment this code. Now this is how we comment in C. You can do something like this, the double strokes, or there are those who prefer to do this. There's this, and then they now write code here, and then they still come down and close it. Sorry about that. So this is still another way of writing code in C, but this is for multiple lines. When it is a single line, you can just use the double strokes, but if it's for multiple lines, it can go in this manner. All right, so this is the basic structure of a C program. And if you write your code without comments, it becomes difficult for another user to be able to understand your code. So it's good practice to always comment your code so that another person who is going to read your code will understand what your code is doing, the function it is playing. All right, so this is the basic structure of a C program. Now the next thing is we are going to dive into what we plan to do for today. Good. So now let's go on to what we are supposed to do today. So variables. This is where we are going to start the tutorial for today. Variables. Now variables, we have what we call literals, and these literals are fixed data values we use directly in our programs. So we have literals like integer literal, we have the floating point literal, and then we have the character literals. So when we say an integer literal, what does it mean? An integer literal refers to numbers without decimal points. So this integer literal. So if we want to write examples of an integer literal, we can say 12, 1, 4, etc. These are all integer literals. That is what we call integer literals. We can also have negative numbers among them, it doesn't matter. But when we refer to a value as an integer literal, this is essentially what we are saying. Something like this, a number without a decimal point. That is what we call an integer literal. Then we have what we call the floating point literals. These floating point literals are numbers with decimal points. So floating point literals, we are referring to numbers in this category, 13. So because I use a multiple, it is going to comment this. Let me just quickly make this floating point literals, and then we have this. We are going to have 13.211. That's a floating point literal. We could also have something like minus 55.67. That is an integer a floating point literal. So the difference between the integer literal and the floating point literals is that the integer literals are just numbers, single digit numbers or double digit numbers without decimal points. Without decimal points. This is the difference. The decimal point differentiates a floating point literal from an integer literal. Now, the third type of literal I mentioned is the character literal. So, what do we refer to as a character literal? For character literals, we are referring to single characters enclosed in single quotation marks. Character literals refers to single characters in single quotation marks. So for example, if I do W, this is a character literal. You see the single quotes here and then the closing quote here with a single character inside. That is what is referred to as a character literal. We could also have something like this, and this is a character literal. All right, this is a character literal. Why is it a character literal? Because it is enclosed in single quotes and it is a single character. An example could be this, and it is a character literal. So guys, when you are supposed to use a character literal, remember it is just a single character, not more, not less. Just one character enclosed in single quotes. All right. Okay, now let's move on to the next step. Let's declare some variables. How do we declare a variable? We start by indicating the data type and then give a variable name. So I could say int, I want to declare an int variable, int age, and then close it with my semicolon. Guys, the semicolon is very necessary because it indicates the end of a statement. That is why for C, that is a very important feature. You see that most of the codes we write, we end it with a semicolon. That is indicating the end of the statement. So let's explain what this int age means. This is just a declared variable. That is simply how we declare variables in C. Now, what does it mean? Age is the variable, and then we use the int keyword to create this variable or to declare the variable. So what does that mean? It means that our age variable, age here, can only and only store integer values. It cannot store floating point literals, neither can it store character literals. All right, so that is how you declare a variable. You state the data type, then you give the variable a name, and when you give the name, you can close it with a semicolon. Now let's properly define a variable and test it out in code. Okay, so the first step I'm going to be commenting my code is declare a variable. So I've declared my variable int age, and then what I want to do next is that I don't want int to just stand on its own like that. I want int to have a value, so I assign a value to int. So I can say int age is equal to 7. Then I close it. So this is how you fully declare the variable int age is equal to 7 and you close it. You can also declare the variable in this format. We'll get to understand when and where to use this format as we move on. But now let's take an example. Let's say, let me delete this. So now let's take an example. So first and foremost, I'm going to create the variable, or declare my variable if you want. Int me is equal to 14. Then I want to print the variable. So I'm going to run print f. Sorry, it's good practice to space out your code. That's a personal preference so that it becomes easy to read. Open my double quotes and write your age is. Then remember the format specifiers, and then I close it out. And my return statement is also available. So now that I've written this program in my file, we can save it and test it to see. So now, if you remember from our video, previous video, I showed you how to compile in C. So gcc-o, and then I'm going to give it a name, run it. Then I now specify my file, vars.c. It's done, and then the next thing is to run it. Okay, so guys, I'm not going to run it yet. I forgot to ask it to put it on a new line, otherwise it's going to clutter and you might not see it properly. So let me quickly do that here for you to see. I want this to be put on a new line, so I just do this and then save it and exit so that we can recompile and run. So gcc-o run it c_vars.c, and it's done. So if I do run it, your age is 14, and that is what has been printed out here. So what did we do? We declared a variable and then asked the program to print the variable. So that is one way of working with variable declarations. Okay guys, we can take another example of variable declaration and then we move on to the other stuff for today. So I can just close this and then zoom in, so that we have a better view. So here is the code from our previous program. Now we are going to, instead of printing integers, print out doubles. So what is the change we are going to make? Simply, we change this int to a double. The double here is in reference to the floating point literal I mentioned when I started. So That is how we declare a floating point literal, and that is just it. So the program is set again. I just need to ask it to print this for me. So I save, exit. The next step is to compile. The next step okay, so the next thing we are going to do is edit our code so that we can work with the doubles. Okay guys, so if you notice, I made an error here, and the error was in the format specifier. So we can't use a D to print out a double. It has to be an LF. Alright, so that was the error over there. So now I can run my GCC, and then ask it to output to run it, and then call out the file .c. Good. So now when we call we run it, it is going to output our literal floating point literal for us. Now let me show you what would have happened if I hadn't made the change with a format specifier. So this is what I'm talking of. It was at this date, so Control X, then we compile our code. Good. So guys, this is the error we are getting. Warning, format %d expects argument of type int, but argument 2 has type double. And you see it is pointing to the line 8 where my error is happening, and it is saying this d is an int, whereas this me, the variable me I declared, is a double. So what is it expecting? Either an f or lf. So you can either use this or lf to direct to a double. So this is how you can print doubles also, and it is the same thing for characters. Okay, so that is what we can look out for. So that is it for doubles. Another thing I would like us to look at is, instead of only printing out single variables, what if we had two variables we want to print out? How do we go about that? Let's use our Emacs to open our CVARs file, and then let me zoom in a bit. Good. I think this will be better. So let's say I have an integer and a double. Then I want to print out these two. What am I going to do? So let's say create int variable, and then I say int num1 is equal to 4. Then create double variable, double num2 is equal to 11.04. So this is my declared variables. Let me put in space for us to see what's happening there. Now, how are we going to print out these two variables which contain different data types? Num1 is an int, num2 is a floating point literal. Okay, it's a double. Now, in order to print this, we can just do it this way. Int is the first one, so we declare the format specifier for int, and then we declare again for the double. Now, when you do that, the next thing to do is to call your variables you declared. So we have num1 and num2. So guys, this is how you do it. Using the format specifier int, you see that I've put space between them. I can even put another space if I want, and you will see that it works the same way. It could be single, it could be double. You can put it together, no problem. Just that the text, the values are going to come out printed together. So remember, num2 is a double, num1 is an int. So we use the format specifier for int and then the format specifier for doubles or floating point literals. So let's save this and go and run it and see what we are going to get. So we have GCC output to what? To run it. And what do we want to output? C_vars. Good, compiled. So now let's run it, and there you have it, guys. We have 4 and 11.04. that is what we put into our code in this file we have here. So if you look at it, it is exactly the variables we declared. So the int is 4, and then the double is 11.04, and that is what we have here, 11.04. So this is how you declare and print variables. You can print single variables, and you can also print double variables. Okay guys, so to put an end to the tutorial, I'm just going to give you a few tips. When you are naming variables, you have to choose names that are clear and concise. Don't give confusing names. Remember, you are writing the code to run a program to create an application, but someone will read your code one day and it should be easy for the person to understand. So your variable names must be clear and concise. And if your variable is going to contain more than one word, it's advisable to use camel case. So if I name my variable age, that is okay, and give it values like 13 or 16, that is okay. But if I want to change from age to new age, I have to write it in camel case. And guys, this is how we write camel case. The first word is in small letters, and then the second word begins with a capital letter. That is camel case. So guys, remember, your variable name should be clear and concise, and if it is more than 2 words, it should be written in camel case. So this is where I draw the curtain on variables. What we've done so far today is look at the basic structure of a C program. We've also looked at how to what types of data types we have. That is the literals. We have the integer literal, we have the floating point literal, then we have the character literal. Then we went ahead to look at how to declare variables. So guys, this is what we've done in a nutshell. If you have any question, please post it in the comments below, and don't forget to share the videos, share the channel, let your colleagues, your friends join, let the family grow so that we continue to learn in tandem. All right, so thank you guys, till the next tutorial. Ciao.